My Wi-Fi has decided to slow down. We're going. Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. We're going to give you about 2-3 minutes to join. So if you're joining in on the chat, we'll say hi, but otherwise feel free to just say something in the comments and we'll get started with the proper event in a minute. A little bit of feedback.
Hello, everybody.
I'm going to mute myself just for a second until anyone joins, as we're getting a little bit of feedback.
Cool. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, George. This is my first live on 70/30. Is it yours?
Yes. Very nerve-wracking, I must say.
It is. But grateful to be doing it, and grateful for anybody that joins to find out a bit more about it.
Yeah. What inspired you to join locally, Michelle?
For me, locally, I've had a lot of experience in addiction, particularly alcohol. I've had a lot of experience working in the community in the past, and a lot of experience being a client as well, using services. So I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of amazing, amazing work that's going on in the community, but also seen quite a bit of work that might be needing a bit of tweaking maybe.
A bit of help.
A bit of help, yeah. And for me personally, being using services and being able to speak out and let people know it's all right to use services in particular. I think there's a big stigma using services, and I think being able to just say to people who are even on my Facebook, look, yeah, I messed up in my life, but I had a good part of my life that was a long part of my life, and that bit doesn't really define me. So really just to be able to make people aware of ACEs and how they affect you, and how trauma can lead to different life experiences for people, and hopefully be part of West Dunbartonshire new services and developing the services that's already there and helping them becoming trauma informed. So that's basically where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's really a lot of great things to talk about today, I think, with all that experience, really. And yeah, Claire, I just wanted to say hi. I saw you said wrote in the chat.
Yeah,
Claire. Hi, Claire.
I can't see. I'm going to look in the comments if I can.
I think Alex might have joined us as well. So hi, Alex, if you're there.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Alex.
How are you doing?
And yeah, what about you, George? What first got you interested, passionate about all this?
Yeah, suffered my own mental health issues, my anxiety, panic attacks. I've shared my story several times when I collapsed in my local high street back in 2006 through the death of my papa and my dad, and it's just overwhelming what comes of you after you do that, because panic then starts to set in, and then you automatically think you're going to faint all the time whenever you're out and about, or whether you haven't got a safe zone to go to, even for just getting into the likes of Asda, a supermarket, or a bigger venue. It's just that sheer panic. And I suppose what got me really engaged in the 70/30 campaign is where West Dunbartonshire is at the moment. I don't think it's any secret that West Dunbartonshire is one of the most deprived areas in the whole of, not just the whole of Scotland, but the whole of the UK, I would say as well, and there is a lot of issues locally with addiction, whether it be alcohol, drug addiction, mental health. Everywhere's the same, with just coming out of the COVID pandemic, it's had a really big effect on people. And it's the same here locally in West Dunbartonshire, where mental health services are stretched. They're really overwhelmed with the amount of folk that are needing support, and that's what got me involved. And obviously as well, the ACEs, changing adverse childhood experiences, raising awareness about ACEs locally, as well as trying to maintain a 70-30 campaign objective, which is obviously to reduce child abuse by 70% by the year 2030, you know, and that starts with a trauma-informed society.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've hit the 5-minute mark, so I think I'm going to let us start this off properly now, and anyone who joins us later on will have to just catch up. So first of all, I mean, we've started a little bit in chatting amongst ourselves, but it would be nice if we kind of introduced ourselves and kind of explained what role we had in the campaign and why we're here today. So I'll start off. I'm Isabel. I've been involved with Wave and 7030 since 2015. And in particular, I was a 7030 ambassador in Aberdeen and started up the Aberdeen group, and am now working with the Wave staff. And so I will be managing the technical difficulties on the live today and managing any comments and questions. So that'll kind of be my role. But I am very glad to be joined here by George and Michelle, who are amazing ambassadors from West Dunbartonshire, who have amazing news to share, who have made huge progress in their local community and are really one of the examples of what can be achieved with a grassroots campaign. So I'm kind of excited to hear a bit more from them. George, do you want to talk a little bit first?
Yeah, sure, Isabel. Thanks, sir. First of all, thank you very much, and I'm sure Michelle will share these sentiments. Thanks for organising this chat. You know, it's good to be on the 7030 campaign page for the first time on a live, and I'm sure I speak for Michelle on that one as well. I started off.
I think I told you this before the call, actually, but you're the first local group to be on the live, so congratulations.
That's an honour. So we need to set a high standard, Michelle. I think, seeing we're the first group, local group on it, but no, it's brilliant. It's fantastic, you know. And I started off as an ambassador two or 3 months ago. You know, I had a wee break in between that because of my mental health. Wasn't that great, but you know, it didn't stop me from pushing what I wanted to achieve as an ambassador for the Wave Trust, you know, and the 7030 campaign locally, and that's when things really kicked off, you know, and I've been involved, and I'm really glad to have the backing of my team as well, who are Michelle and Leslie as well. You know, they're two wonderful folk, and really collectively as a team, we're really starting to go places, I think, with the campaign and making a positive impact on the communities of West Dunbartonshire.
Yeah, and I think it's so impressive to see what just 3 people can achieve in a few short months. I think that's something we've proved with this particular event, really. And I think we had the same experience in Aberdeen. It just took 2 passionate people kind of putting their heads together and seeing what they could do to start momentum going. And yeah, I'm hoping lots more people will be inspired to do the same. So Michelle, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. I got involved last month, was it, George? Yeah. It was just like a kind of series of events, really, from myself, like in recovery, and you know, like, and I came across, I think it was George, I came across just different groups I'd joined on Facebook, and before you know it, I'd seen like the Wave Trust in the 7030 campaign. I thought, wow, that's exactly the kind of thing that I really feel passionately about. So I kind of signed up for it, and then I've met with George and my friend Leslie. So since I've joined up, I've been quite active. I've joined my local lived experience group for drugs and alcohol, which is really good because it's giving people a voice and services in the local community. So I've got involved in that, and again, that'll be taking a 70-30 kind of equals into that kind of lived experience group. I've actually just started a course on advocacy as well, so I'm quite excited about that. I haven't been working for like over 5 years, I think. So like my confidence and things like that really kind of took a right dip. Yeah. So getting involved in this as well is actually really good for me to help my confidence and having a bit of purpose in life again. What else have I been doing since it? Myself and George and Leslie met last week, and we're really excited about getting the group together and getting it constituted, and like West Dunbartonshire wide, having just different. We're hoping to get as many people, well, not as many, just as many people on board with different life experiences who understand cases in particular. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to have to say hi to Claire, who is filling the chat with so much
Hi,
support.
Claire.
Thanks. I
was really nervous. I was very early on, and she's like, "Oh, come on, thank you."
That's another amazing ambassador we have on the team, and I fully get what you mean, Michelle, about the confidence. I think that's part of the joy of joining such a big network, is finding a team who's cheering behind you for all your achievements, but also motivating you through the hard bits, because there are hard moments in being a volunteer and an ambassador, and things don't always go as planned, but it's nice to have experiences to learn from and motivation.
I've met so many beautiful people in a short space of time. It's wonderful. So it is. It's really wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I think before we dive into the really important bit of today, I'm just going to spend maximum 2 minutes explaining a little bit about WAVE and 70/30, just because not everyone on the live might be aware of what they are and what they do, etc. And even if we're, share the video later on as well, people might want to find out a little bit more. So yeah, WAVE Trust is a national charity, and WAVE stands for Worldwide Alternatives to Violence. And it's a charity that was set up 25 years ago to kind of tackle the root causes of violence. And to do so, they realized that you needed to look at trauma and adverse childhood experiences and look at, what set people on a pathway towards violence. This kind of then expanded into wanting to prevent child maltreatment, wanting to prevent trauma, and wanting to prevent violence. And from this, they launched the 70/30 campaign. And the 70/30 campaign is a campaign to reduce child abuse and neglect by 70% by 2030. So not at all, an easy achievement. They go for ambitious, but I think with ambassadors like ourselves, we are going to get there, even if we have to push quite hard. And they plan on doing this, or we plan on doing this, I guess, really, because we're the ambassadors for the 70/30 campaign, by pushing for primary prevention in our local communities on a national level, campaigning with politicians, MPs, etc. But also by getting our local communities trauma informed. And I think that's what really you guys can tell us a little bit more about today, of getting your local communities involved, your local council involved, the local government involved, and how we can, with a little bit of passion, you can really make change in your local communities and start healing, start protecting people from being re-traumatized and re-triggered, and really improve the area around you. So that's kind of a little bit of the WAVE and 70/30 background. If anyone has any questions, do feel free to drop them in the chat. Or, I see someone else has joined as well. Hi, Josh. Glad to see you're excited. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop us in the chat or message the page on Messenger afterwards. There's plenty of ways to get in touch, and we'd love to tell you a little bit more about it. But moving on to the most exciting part of today, that we've hinted at various times talking about achievements, George and Michelle have managed to get their local council to partner with WAVE and to endorse the 70/30 campaign and to commit to start work on becoming trauma informed. So yeah, I'd love to hear from both of you, from either of you, and find out so much more, because I think it's a really great achievement. How did you do it? What were you nervous going into it? What does this mean going forward, etc.?
I think this is George's part, isn't it? George has been the one that's been involved from the very beginning and got there. So well done, George. Amazing.
Oh, I suddenly can't hear you, George. You don't seem to be muted, but no. Have your headphones given up on you? No. Ooh, no luck. I'm going to let you deal with that for just a second, and I'm going to remove you from the stream. Give me a wave when you're finished, and I'll be back. Michelle, do you want to take this first whilst we're waiting for George to be all right?
Yeah. To be honest, I came in just as George had done all the work, so I feel bad kind of trying to come in here. I know that George was really, really like motivated and kind of enthusiastic, and he'd done a lot of work in writing to the local councillors to get the motion passed in West Dunbartonshire. I did send an email to my local councillors, which by that time they were already involved anyway. But hopefully George can explain a bit more. But really, I think the main aim is to get every council to sign up to the motion to become trauma-informed. And with West Dunbartonshire like agreeing to the motion, we're just waiting. I think they're going to be doing some kind of report and looking at what is available in the area and what might need kind of improvements in the area. So we're really excited to find that report when it comes and then work alongside them, hopefully, to help. So I think George is really the best person.
Yeah, George will be back in a second. I'll mention a few things as well. He's just nipping in and out of my system. Hi, Aidan. In the meantime,
done a lot of work on this. Like I don't like to take any of the work that you've done.
Let me try adding George in again. We'll see how that goes. George, how are you doing?
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, but you know, it's I kind of got the kind of brief feedback there from Michelle. I was quite, as Michelle says, I was quite positive, and Michelle's touched on it just there as well when she was speaking. The fact that she's engaged with her local councillor, and obviously we want to keep that level of engagement going forward because it's going to be vital to what we want to do and achieve, because we want everybody to be involved. You know, the buck doesn't just stop with me or doesn't stop with Michelle or even Leslie. You know, everybody, we want this to be a movement here in West Dunbartonshire, so to speak. You know, and get as many ambassadors on board as we can, because the more people that we've got here locally in West Dunbartonshire, you know, the powerful the voice will be, and I think that is going to be key and what we try to achieve. But yeah, I think we've had some councillors enthusiastic about it, and all councillors are, don't get me wrong, because it's such an important issue as the 70-30 campaign and the terms of reduction of child abuse by 70% by the year 2030, you know, and I think Councillor Dixon and Councillor Conahan were really supportive in passing our motion. You know, they were the first ones to come forward and wanted to meet up with us, and have expressed a great desire of interest to work with us moving forward as well, which I think it's okay supporting a motion in detail in principle, sure, but I think it's just as important as someone or a councillor turning around and saying to us, look, we want to continue to help you moving forward, because if you've still got that interaction locally, then it's that level of support that perhaps that we do require and need. So on the day of the actual council meeting, to see the Wave Trust's name appear on the actual minutes of the council meeting was a very proud moment for me, and for my fellow ambassadors, because to get that there signalled something, not just for West Dunbartonshire and not even for Scotland, but for the Wave Trust as a whole. And the campaign, because that meant that
and beyond,
it was on.
If I may say so. I think
Absolutely,
I had a
conversation
with someone in Canada the other day who'd been following what 70-30 had been doing online. You know, it becomes an example internationally, really, if we can really get a pilot of what it means to become trauma informed. So it's a really amazing step.
Yeah, and that's the case. You know, as you say, it's a kind of global global movement, and certainly here in West Dunbartonshire, hopefully this will empower other communities, other councils to come on board with us, and we are collectively, myself, Michelle, and Leslie are trying to build the key relationships that are required locally with different folk. But going back to
comment from Aidan on this, if you want a bit more detail, asking how are you looking to build those relationships, and I think other ambassadors and other activists in general would be really interested to know how that's going to work going forward.
Yeah, I think I'd probably say that we need to be non-party political on this on the subject, because here in West Dunbartonshire, even though we have a SNP led administration, it's important that we don't just work with them, that we work with other parties. I mean, the Labour Party here in Scotland included it in page 60 of their manifesto, pledging to work with us and endorsing the 70-30 campaign, and indeed a whole range of MSPs right across the political spectrum in Scotland have agreed to endorse it, as in with England, Wales, and that is the case, that we need to remain non-political, biased towards a political party. It doesn't matter what political party's in power. The fact is that collectively, council and opposition parties, it was a unanimous decision that they wanted to work with the 70-30 campaign and the Wave Trust. And that for me, just hearing everybody, no objectives at all, and the motion being passed was really great to hear. And for me, that was a really, really pleasing moment.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, I've seen you kind of continue on those relationships beyond just getting it passed, because we had Councillor Dixon, I believe, came to talk to us ambassadors about it as well. And, I think he really drove home the idea for me that they're still just people who are passionate about this cause in the same way, and who see the effects of trauma in their work and in the different projects they have to look at. And ultimately, in building relationships, we just have to be honest and not be scared to approach people and go from there.
I think it's important for, just going back to the question from Aidan, building relationships with local councillors. Obviously, through COVID, there's not been a lot of kind of face-to-face kind of surgeries or anything like that. So I think now that obviously things are opened up a bit more, this is a great opportunity to start developing those links with local councillors, because there's not really been the opportunity as much, I don't think. So for me personally, it'll be nice to be able to go and meet councillors one-to-one if their surgeries are open one-to-one and things like that. And again, going back to George speaking about it being non-politically, having no, I think that's really important. I mean, we've got our MSP in the Clydebank area from SNP, and we've got our MSP in the Dumbarton area from the Labour Party. So both working on both have agreed to this campaign. So there's no political agenda for the 70-30 campaign. I think it's just a case of, for me and George, working locally, and Leslie and anybody else who decides to join alongside us to work maybe in smaller communities. Like I'm in Clydebank, George is in Dumbarton, and West Dunbartonshire is quite a wide area. So getting lots of people on board to work with their local councillors, different people, is going to be amazing, I think, when that happens.
I mean, I think building a team like that is so important. And I think, from my experience as an ambassador, there are so many people out there who are already passionate about this cause, who just need to find out that there's a group being built, because it will be teachers who've seen it every single day in their classroom. It will be police officers who have to deal with trauma every day. It will be support workers, social workers, there's people working in prisons. We had a lot in Aberdeen. It'll be third sector. There's people who know the science already. There's people who don't know the terminology but have had their first-hand experience of what's going on. And I think, especially with the council on board, you'll find your team growing very, very quickly as people start to find out more and start to see things change. So I'm excited to see the updates on that.
Yeah, definitely, and as I said as well, moving forward, we're looking to build on relationships with local councillors, politicians, not just our local ones in Dumbarton. Obviously, we've got a region that's full of MSPs as well. So the West of Scotland region, we're looking to obviously try and build relationships on that side as well. So yeah, we're enhancing our relationships here locally, but also on a national level. We're wanting to work with the guys over in Lothian, yourselves up in Aberdeen, as a network, because strong together we're stronger. Apart, we're kind of in the minority. So it's good that here in West Dunbartonshire, council has agreed to work with the Wave 70/30 campaign, but we don't stop there. We want every council in Scotland and indeed England to and in Wales to come on board.
Northern Ireland and eventually beyond. Sorry, in the meantime, I'm being interrupted by the cat, but it wouldn't be alive without some kind of interruption.
Is the cat an ambassador, Isabel?
She should be. Can I get her in? There you go. An honorary ambassador from now on.
Fantastic.
But well. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll ask them as well. Thanks, Aidan, there. But definitely, and I think the spreading it beyond to the many different local councils is really something that I think on a national level the ambassador network is pushing towards, because you get to try many different ways of approaching being trauma informed, many different ways to deal with different local challenges, and you can really find out what works whilst helping so many people in those local areas and start pushing for bigger change. And yeah, I think the network, as you've said, between West Lothian, Isle of Wight, Aberdeen, and I think Kent and all the other areas that we have across the UK now is going to be what makes that difference.
Yeah, and it's going to be key, and as I said on our own Facebook page, us being the third largest deprived area in Scotland, equal to North Ayrshire, it's a worrying start to have, and that makes me and Michelle and indeed Leslie more enthusiastic to do something about it, and to work with interested parties locally here in West Dunbartonshire to make a change. It's important that we allow people in the right areas to look at what they do already and what doesn't work so well. It's important to allow that process to happen so that we can offer our support where it's needed. So that there needs to be a period of time to allow that to happen. But we don't stop there. We want to build the relationships in the meantime. So when it comes to that stage, we're helping promote the 70/30 campaign objectives, but also as well as engaging with the local community. Because if we engage with the local community, that means positive outcomes for the campaign, but also, more importantly, young people in West Dunbartonshire.
Absolutely. How do you both feel, and Michelle, maybe hear a bit more from you about, trauma-informed being used as a buzzword versus it being seen as kind of that ongoing process of a long-term thing. So I think you're starting to experience that between news articles around this big achievement and actually knowing that it takes time to build relationships and stuff.
Yeah. I know. There just needs to be a buzzword, like every time there's like kind of funding coming up, or every time there's like kind of issues like that, trauma informed. I don't want it to become a buzzword. Like, it needs to be trauma informed, and then maybe like myself, George and Leslie, speaking to local community groups about trauma and how it's maybe affected us, in particular as people have experienced like trauma. That's obviously not something we're going to do online, like kind of live and all that kind of stuff. Like, but I think for me personally, it's about people recognising that maybe like the first, like maybe if they've experienced trauma in their lives, maybe that's how maybe addictions happen. Maybe like, you know, just to try. It's more about kind of helping people understand trauma. For me personally, and understanding the effects of trauma, and maybe even more for professionals to understand it a bit more, who are in the job dealing with people who've experienced trauma. I mean, even things like doctors going to a doctor's surgery. Some doctors, in my experience, don't really have a genuine they might have an understanding of trauma, but they might also not be very well empathetic towards trauma survivors when it comes to looking at kind of helping addiction and all that kind of stuff. I know there's a lot of work getting done with that, which is really good, like in local Scottish government. But in my experience, personally, I think more importantly, to inform the professionals and how to help people who have experienced trauma, and for them to be held accountable as well. For if they're in a position of authority, to be working in a trauma-informed kind of organisation, I think.
Yeah, fully. I think I agree with you entirely on the professionals. I know that I've been to see psychologists who, you know, I know for a fact have had training on trauma and still not have it embedded as an understanding in everything they do. You know, they'll look at it as, am I treating that trauma in this moment, or am I looking at something else, rather than seeing it as something that impacts every level of someone's life, or that, you know, interacts with every part in a sense. Or, you know, doctors who don't realize the impact it has on health outcomes as well as just the mental health and ins and outs. So I fully agree on that. And I think training professionals is something that we focused in on Aberdeen, I think even before approaching the local council. But I think, yeah, I mean, the quote that everyone uses, but for a good reason, because it's so impactful, it's making sure that you're switching from that mindset of what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And that doesn't mean asking that explicitly. It just means having it in the back of your mind. You don't know what that person's been through. You don't know what's happening. You've got to ask, is this a symptom of something? You know, how can I help them feel safe before we deal with something else?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think, George, about the buzzword versus kind of ongoing process?
Yeah, it's okay for a lot of companies to say that they're trauma informed, but actually, are they trauma informed? You know, do they understand what trauma is, how it can affect people differently? You know, you look at lots of people just now who have maybe lost a loved one through COVID, or have maybe suffered from COVID themselves. You know, that can be a traumatic event for a said person, you know, and what happens with that, you know, trauma can be delayed in such many ways, so it might not hit them to a year, maybe even longer than that down the line. But for the reality, and I entirely agree with Michelle, if you go to a doctor and you say to them, you're suffering from trauma, then you know, doctors are very limited, especially just now, because we're not getting face-to-face consultations here in Scotland as of yet. And obviously, I think that's the case for the rest of the UK. And in that case, you know, you're very limited to what time you can spend talking to a doctor. And gone are the days where you know, you could sit down to your doctor and say, right, which triggered this off, your depression or your anxiety or your panic or your low mood, you know. And there is that lack of awareness. You know, I seen a statistic a couple of months ago, and it was really damning. It was like 30% of doctors in the UK really only are able to tell if a child under 5 has trauma or is suffering from trauma experiences, and that's pretty damning, for that to be found, to be the case, and in this day and age, there has to be, especially deliverance of trauma-informed training, particular to different work settings. We've got a guy here who is a great miss to the 70-30 campaign. He was signed up to be an ambassador, and he works at a high school. He would have been a fantastic addition to the team here, but he's still continuing with his work at Clydebank High School, and he's basically made his pupils, the teaching staff there, very much trauma informed, and creates a different mindset to one which basically society looks at, and it's just great to see that happening on a local level. But that's only a rare example. It shouldn't be a rare example. It
I think
shouldn't.
there's a lot going on in the community that we might not know about, and that's part of our job, is to hopefully get to build a community profile. I mean, I don't know if there's probably already something like it, but you used to get like the old community directories of like what's on in the area and all that kind of stuff. And like, I don't know if there is anything like that. If anybody knows that's watching this, if they can maybe put a wee comment in, but it'd be good to just kind of link in with all the different agencies. And I was looking at Claire's comment there about it taking 40 years to be finally diagnosed with trauma. I mean, that is probably the same for myself, if I'm honest. I first went to the doctor when I was about 19 or maybe with depression. And it's only taken till like this year. And I've been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, that's quite a long time for professionals to pick up on something like that when you've been in and out of services over the years. So things like that really have to change. And here's hoping like this 70-30 campaign is going to be part of that change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is both for you and for Claire, that is such a long time to kind of miss something like that. But I think that's really a good example of what often happens. You look at one individual symptom and focus on that rather than understanding the root causes fully and seeing where it comes from. Depression and substance abuse and struggling at work and all the other many different ways that trauma can manifest are all linked together because of those reactions of your stress response system, and just looking at each one separately doesn't actually help you heal from it, really. So yeah, I'm glad you have finally had a bit more insight and a bit more of a support network as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, George, with what you were saying, you reminded me of something we don't often talk about as part of the 70-30 campaign. And that's kind of another way that you can help move this cause along, help us reach our goals, which is really embed what we do into your work. Some people don't have the time to become full-on ambassadors and full-on volunteers, but they do have the capability to talk to their boss, to make a difference where they are, to share the resources they've developed in their workplace. I know we've had, similar people who've collaborated. It might be offering the space, their office space or their, conference space for the 70-30 campaign to host a local event. There's many different little ways that people who are passionate about this can kind of get involved. And I think they are truly the unseen backbone of this campaign, in a sense, because it's people making difference in their own life.
Yeah, definitely, and like I say, there probably I agree entirely with Michelle. There is probably employers out there that we don't know, or companies out there that we don't know do trauma informed in West Dunbartonshire, but we just need to be careful, because a lot of companies can turn around and say that they are trauma informed, but are they actually? And that poses a different question as well. I think if there is local companies out there that do it and do it correctly, then my hat's off to them, because it's something that needs to be encouraged, and it needs to be something that should be out there in the limelight, that people know about they're trauma informed, they're passionate about mental health. Every look, I'll be honest with you just now and say, in West Dunbartonshire, I do not know one company who has a mental first aider, a mental health first aider. Now that's a worrying start, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic and also the increase of mental health in West Dunbartonshire. And I think that's something that needs to get pushed along as well, and being able to recognise trauma and being able to offer that support, that more kind of engineered support that GPs can't be. Listen, GPs are time. We all know that GPs are time constrained at the moment, and that they have a lot of workload and things like that with backlogs. But I think it's just important as well, just to reflect on the different things that we hear as well. We don't maybe witness some things, but in other ways we do. We look at our friends, for example, we hear what they say, and sometimes it's just worrying in the kind of society we live in, with all this mental health that's piling up, and what's going to happen with it all.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I don't think I could agree more really on that. I'm not seeing any new comments in the chat with any specific questions. Is there anything either of you guys would like to share about what you hope to take forward as a team, what your next steps are?
Yeah. Michelle, what do you think?
Thanks. I think the next step is we'll be coming together as a meeting. Our next meeting's a couple of weeks, isn't it, George? What date
Saturday.
is it?
Saturday.
Was it? Oh, dear.
No, we're meeting. Our next ambassador meeting will be a couple of weeks. But we're meeting with the. Now, this is the whole thing about going live, folks. My mind's drawn a blank. I'm going to have to look back at. Oh, aye, the Champions Board.
Put it in the. Put it on the page, whatever it is.
Aye.
But
no, the champions.
The champions. You can talk
the Champions
about
Board. Yeah, we're meeting with them Saturday.
It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you explain in a little bit more detail what that is? Because I know you've spoken to some of the ambassadors about it, but everyone might not know what that is.
Yes, it's basically a Champions Board, and they've got 20. I believe it's 21 Champions Board across the whole of Scotland. And basically, I've got a wee definition here that I had to look up myself because I didn't really know what they were either. They're forums, basically a collection of forums which create a unique space for care experienced young people to meet with key decision makers, service leads, and elected members to influence the design of kind of local engagement and things like that. So it's basically care experienced young people, and it's about giving them a voice locally, and meet with, as I say, meet with different people in all shapes of form in the community. So what we're going to discuss with them, both myself and Michelle on Saturday, and Leslie as well, how we can work together as a campaign, and for them as a kind of a collective working group. It's very exciting to hear the enthusiasm from Craig, who is the project. He's the kind of project lead on this, and it's they are, as Jay says. I've just seen Jay's comment there. Yeah.
Great news.
He's meeting with the West Lothian champions soon too. They're fantastic. Jay. And when I spoke to Craig, I was at work. I was actually at work, and nobody knows about my 70-30 campaign at work. And he says, I just searched you on the address bar and hoping that you were a council employee, and to get this message, it was really nice. And we're looking at ways, or we're exploring ways to try and increase our ambassador roles here in West Dunbartonshire. So there's a lot of care experienced young folk. We're meeting two of the leads on Saturday as well as Craig, and hopefully it's our hope. I know Michelle shares this 100% as well, that they'll come along as ambassadors in the 70-30 campaign, because as Michelle, I'll highlight herself, and me and Michelle are total agreement here, it's as important that young people in West Dunbartonshire have a voice and must be heard.
Definitely.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And great to see Jay as motivated as always. I think definitely Jay. If we haven't even a 10th of your energy, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Jay's marvelous, and he's enthusiasm and passion comes through. He's the man's got a heart of gold, and
also, for some context for anyone who's watching later, Jay is the coordinator for the 70-30 campaign in Scotland.
Yeah, he has that, and he does a sterling job as well, But as Jay says, it is vital that we get the voice of our next generation and generations to come as well, because it really is key to hear care experienced younger folk, and that's the key point. Care experienced, they've been there, and they've maybe witnessed a few adverse childhood experiences themselves. I mean, I had a discussion with Craig, the project lead of the Champions Board here in West Dunbartonshire, and he shared with me that there's a couple of folk, in fact, that do suffer from all 10 ACEs, and he shared with me the kind of thing was that you suffer from 10 ACEs, you've just got to go on, mate. Now, that shouldn't be the approach we should have either, because if we take that approach, then it's going to lead to other things like addictions and poor mental health and, early death, as it's been speculated if you do suffer for a lot of these ACEs, and I think it's never true a saying that young voices need to be heard.
Yeah, sorry, I got somewhat distracted by answering the comments in the meantime, but I followed the first 80% of that, and I think we need that voices from children in care, absolutely, because we need people with lived experience. And I think I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to do a live collaborating with the new Hearts of Ace Council of Lived Experience as well, to really bring that to the forefront. And I know there's all kinds of people who have amazing insight to share, but we need to get everyone's voice involved. We need to make sure we're listening to all the different people affected in different ways by this, and protecting them as much as possible.
Yeah, and that is important, definitely.
And I'm just, what's Jay saying? Yeah, I think Jay makes a really good comment there about how we think about adverse childhood experiences. I think when we're looking at trends in a population, you can really see the difference between like the cumulative effect of ACEs. Having 10 ACEs is a different experience to just having one. But when you actually look at the individual person, you need to know the story behind it. You need to know the protective factors. You need to know what they have now. You need to know what their community was like around them. You need to know when these things happen. Did it happen in a critical developmental stage, etc. It's always so much more complex when you actually look at it on a one-on-one level. The ACE number is there to give us an impression, to give us an idea of how to approach these issues, but it's not actually a completely honest reflection of the world, because it will always be more complicated than a list of 10 things. Hi, William. Thank you for making it, even if you're getting in at the end there.
I was just going to say, I think, like, obviously prevention, that is like the key for the 70-30 campaign, isn't it? And it's to ensure that people don't have to suffer all these different ACEs from an early age onwards. So for me personally, like, getting the young people on board as well is like prevention for future generations. Like, they're going to go on and have families of their own, and if they can get the support that they need right now, then that's going to have an impact on the future generation.
It's about breaking the cycle, because ultimately it is kind of that intergenerational cycle. If someone goes through all of those traumatic experiences and doesn't have support, then in some way they will pass on some struggles to their children. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same ones or in the exact same way, but if you don't know better and if you don't have a support system to do better, then it becomes that cycle. And by helping, you know, young people in care, by helping survivors, by helping teenagers, by helping children, and if you can get them from conception to age 2, that's even better. You know, all of it is prevention from that continuing on. And absolutely, yes, a brilliant quote from Jay again.
I like that.
Never true a word said, Jay.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, at the core of everything that 70/30 does.
Yeah, and that's key. I mean, prevention's better than recovery.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, that's ultimately why we're all here. You know, whether you've had that lived experience yourself or not, you know, we don't want people to have to go through that again. You know, it's beyond just healing. We can stop this from happening. We have the tools to stop it from happening. So we should be doing our utmost to prevent it. And Jay is sharing as well the email address for anyone who wants it to talk about the Council of Lived Experience, to get in touch. I know that they're starting to reach out and expand as a council. So if you do have lived experience and you do want to get involved, please do get in touch with Jay and the rest of the council. And also a brilliant comment from Claire there. It stops with me. It's about that breaking the cycle. Absolutely. I know Claire is another one of our ambassadors and is doing great work to heal herself and heal everyone around her and bring all of her motivation to her community.
Yeah, we're hoping to welcome her up.
Your pal.
And yeah, I think unless we have any more questions, I'd possibly end the day talking a little bit about what it means to be ambassadors, in the sense of, you know, we've had lots of amazing people from our team come on the live today. And I know you guys are hoping to find more people in West Dunbartonshire. And I know on a national level, any new ambassador is always welcome. So yeah, what would you guys have to say in terms of what's the experience of being an ambassador like?
Well,
one of the best parts of being an ambassador is meeting so many beautiful new people. That's probably, for me, one of the best parts of the ambassadors, and knowing that I can have an impact and help and create change. For me, that's really about it, really, for now. Yeah.
I think for me, as Michelle says, it's about meeting new people. I've made our best new friend from it. You know, somebody that I've never met before. But no, it's great because you meet people from different backgrounds from yourself, you know, and collectively, I feel that your voice is powerful, and that's something that I didn't think it was until I started doing this. It's only when you start doing something like this, the ambassador role as a 70/30, for the 70/30 campaign, should I say, that you realise that you do have a voice and you do matter, you know, and your opinion does count as well. And as Jay says as well, you know, you're making a change, not just for, I've got 2 kids, you know, and Michelle's got her own children as well, you know, and you're trying to better improve the kids and locally here in West Dunbartonshire as well, you know, because it can be so hard to see such things in West Dunbartonshire, you know. It's really, it can be heartbreaking seeing some of the things we see here locally.
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone else really on that, of why it's so amazing to be a 70/30 ambassador. I first joined when I was about 18, I guess, kind of getting somewhat involved. And as you said, it was finding out that you actually had the power to make a difference. You know, you're not just on your own and isolated from everything against these huge problems that just overtake your life and the world around you. You're actually have the chance to make a difference, to make things better in your own life and in other people's life, and you can learn from so many other different people. Especially as I started out so young, it made such a difference to have, one person who'd spoken to local councils before, one person who dealt with MPs, a person who'd, studied trauma for years, or someone who'd approached schools before and truly understood that, someone who had experience with children in care, etc., and having that just such a wide variety of experience to learn from and to build on, and just really going from feeling kind of powerless to knowing that the world could be better and gaining that optimism again. I think it was really powerful, a really strong experience for me.
Yeah, and I think your different roads of expertise are important as well. Me and Michelle are come from two different backgrounds. We've got some shared experiences that we both have. But even Gerard, kind of where Michelle stays, West Dunbartonshire's a big council area. And Michelle's up the other end, and I'm kind of in the middle, and that makes a difference because it's so big, West Dunbartonshire, that it does help, having different people on board as well, so you've got a collective group of views, because it's important to have each individual's views on things, because it gives you another perspective.
And you need those perspectives. They're complicated issues. There's not just one story. There's not just one truth. You've got to understand how complex a thing we're trying to tackle.
Yeah, that's it. And it is complex, and sometimes, you feel, well, I felt as well, like at times where I wasn't going to get anywhere, and I felt a wee bit down in the dumps once or twice, but I didn't stop, I kept champing on the door, so to speak, and with Michelle coming on board, and her enthusiasm, it's just take us both together, and Leslie as well, it's just it really has made a difference in me, just gave me a bit of fire inside my belly again.
I think me and George are really, and Leslie, we're all really passionate about this. So I think, like, once we kind of start developing, get the champions on board and all sorts, like, it's just, there's loads of passion there, and there's obviously, we're looking forward to just whatever the next steps are.
Yeah, and you've got to keep the network updated and keep us updated on social media. I'm excited to see where this goes, really, after the endorsement and what we could come out of it. When they finally release the report, I'd love to know, what great things have you got to build on.
Yeah, and that'll be key, as I said, I'll share again, it'll be key to obviously wait until that report comes out, and then it's properly...
Sorry, George, to say, I was a wee bit kind of just coming on board when they passed the motion. Did they say there was a time scale for the report to come out? Do you know? I can't remember that.
No, there's not been a time scale yet, because unfortunately the person who would have done the report as such has left post and gone to another post. So they are appointing someone else to do a report. Now, bear in mind as well, I think as most folk will know, it's no what we're doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Isabel, it's not just one issue. It's not just focused in health. It's focused in education. It's focused in crime, different other things. It's not just the one. So it's a collective measure where we're going to have to try and look at education, early years education as well. So and that'll be key, and it will be interesting to see what they come back with. But I think for myself anyway, I think we'll be well looking into maybe next year before we get any kind of progress on that, because it is going to take time, and we've just got to accept that, and as I say, it doesn't stop us from doing what we want to do, because what we want to do and I'm sure Michelle agrees with me on this. Like, what we want to do is we want to empower our voice more. So in that time that we've got a strong voice and a strong team that can make sure that the objectives of the 70-30 campaign are not only maintained but are thrived in West Dunbartonshire.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that way of phrasing it, not just maintaining, but thriving.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
We'll be using that one again, George. And yeah, I think that was also really insightful what you said about it not just being about health, not just being about education. I think if we imagine a fully trauma-informed community, somewhere completely trauma-informed, you'd have to have the banks be trauma-informed. You'd have to have every janitor in every school trauma-informed. You'd have to have, just making sure it's in every single part of the community and fully embedded in society is when, we'll be done with this particular job, because
it's
you
a massive job.
Where it makes the most impact. So things like health and policing and crime and education and care, but ultimately, it can go into every sector, it can go into the third sector, it can go into the private sector. It impacts every area of people's lives. Yeah,
it does. And I think, when you look at things, it does affect so many kind of departments, council departments, that it will take a while for them to generate this report. But it's important when we do get it that it's properly analysed, so we know what kind of areas need strengthened, or what we can try and work out, what we can do to work out, and how to support. And indeed, talk to folk, with this working group that we're hopefully going to achieve. That's part and part of what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to become more involved in, as I say, the Champions Board. Will be a unique relationship and something that I feel that can lead to bigger things, hopefully, in a national picture.
Absolutely. I'm noticing that we've passed the 1 hour mark. So if anyone has any last minute questions, stick them in the chat quickly whilst we're kind of wrapping up, or drop us a message on the 7030 page. But if not, I guess, thank you so much for coming and joining in. And thank you, George, and thank you, Michelle, for sharing. I'm sorry Leslie couldn't make it today, but send her all of our best, because I know that she is an essential part of the team and is making as much of a difference as you guys are. And if you have any closing things you'd like to say, feel free to share. But thank you so much for everything you're doing.
I guess just any closing things would be, I think Jay's put the email address for the Hearts of Ace Wave Trust. So if anybody wants to get involved, then please email that Hearts of Ace Wave Trust.
Yeah.
And and I think I was just going to plug our Facebook page as well, 7030 Campaign West Dunbartonshire, if you go and search it on Facebook. And hopefully, if you're interested in obviously joining us as an ambassador locally, would be more than happy to invite you to come on board and join, and empowering the community and making us grow.
Absolutely. I'm just going to share the link now. So this is the Wave Trust and 7030 website, and you can sign up to be an ambassador straight away from there. So www.wavetrust.org/7030. And do sign up, do join. We'd love you to have you on the team, and you'll have our wonderful ambassador, super ambassador Alex, forward you on to all the local groups once he's given you an initial training. So definitely. And thank you, Claire, for being in part of the team as well.
Yeah.
If that's everything, I will say goodnight to everyone and let everyone continue with their evening. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you, George and Michelle, again.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.